Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Robert Phoenix, and I'm back for another edition of Sunday Night Astro Live with you here on the night of this very deep and profound lunar eclipse. You know, I'm gonna change my background here. I was rocking this other background on Friday, and typical Zoom fashion. Let me see if I can find another image of this. Let's see. It sounds like I'm going live here. So it looks pretty good. Let me see if I can find another image of what I want to put up here, because that would be better than the one I have. So let's just try this again. Maybe I'll come up with a better image, a clearer image, but one that captures the interesting visuals of a 2019 movie called The Wave with Justin Long, which we watched last night, and it's a really interesting movie. And of course, I'm always looking for the astrological breakdown, the astrological potential for a movie or anything in general. And I think The Wave is a really, really, really good bit of conversation that we can have tonight. So let me see if I can find a better image. Okay, I think I might have found a better image. Give me 1 second here, because I really like that image. I need better resolution. Let's try this one. Maybe this one would be a little bit better. It should be, because I really like it, and it kind of speaks to the Aquarian side of things. We got a Jasper sighting tonight. All right, let me swap this out. Sometimes over pixelated images they can be kind of cool depending on how you use them. Like, I'm not a stickler all the time for some level of perfection, but isn't that better? That's way better. So that's a still from The Wave. We're going to talk about it tonight because I think it's a very, very interesting movie. And in the astrological ramifications of The Wave, and some very interesting backstories. You can see up here in the upper part of the image that the cosmos is naked and exposed. And in a weird way, it's a very visionary film that's shot on quite a low budget. I've learned not to play trailers on my show, but you know what I am going to do tonight? I'm going to record this show, because a lot of times these shows, well, not a lot of times, every now and then they won't make it. I'm getting a feeling I should record tonight, especially under a Mercury retrograde. So you may hear the familiar automated Zoom voice telling you that this is being recorded. And there it is. So I'm just going to have a backup of this tonight, just in case. Who knows? It might be a really good show. It might be a really good show, in which case I'll want a backup, especially if it's taken down. And we know how that goes these days. How is everybody? I hope you're surfing the dark wave, the first lunar eclipse of this eclipse cycle. And boy, is it a humdinger. And we're going to get into some of the symbolism tonight. There was a supposed shooting that went on. Yes, I know you weren't there. Thank God. You were not there. You were not there. I can vouch for that. You were not pulling the trigger, and you did not write a catafesto. Cats write catafestos. They don't write manifestos. Only men write manifestos. Do women? I guess Valerie Solanas wrote a manifesto, didn't she? When she shot Andy Warhol. Usually they're men, so maybe that's why they're called manifestos. And cats would write catafestos. And I don't think I've ever seen a catafesto before. Have you ever seen a catafesto? I don't think so. I don't even think you're capable of writing one. Even if you wanted to write one, you just don't have it in you. And manifestos are, they're always associated with these shootings. And apparently, our shooter of the moment, Peyton Gedron, there's an interesting name, wrote a 180-page manifesto, 180 fucking pages. A lot of it was copied and pasted from the Christchurch shooters manifesto. So there's some weird overlap with the Christchurch shooter. If you don't know who or what that is, that happened not very long ago. And it happened on March 15th, the old Ides of March. And we'll get into some of that tonight. We're going to get into some of the symbolism tonight because of all the places for the shooting to take place. It took place where? In Buffalo, New York, which is, of course, a symbol of the sign of Taurus. Even though Taurus is a bull and a buffalo is a buffalo, well, they're kind of similar. What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, so he. You want to write a manifesto? How come nobody writes like hopeful manifestos? How come? All the manifestos we get are dark manifestos. Although Ted Kaczynski, we've talked about him before. I have no problem with calling Ted Kaczynski a prophet of doom because he called it. He called all the technological bullshit. And, Ted had a not so healthy way of processing his rage. Let's put it that way. But his prescience cannot be denied. Cannot be denied. He thought through a lot of things, and he saw the dark age of technology descending down upon us. This is in the background, isn't it? Why don't we put this over here? Put this over here. So it's not so much of a thing, right? We want to have the illusion that I'm out here on the celestial dunes with Justin Long. And what's this actress's name? She was pretty good. She's pretty believable. Kind of a low budget movie. The Wave, kind of low budget. The guy, there's some interesting backstories with this movie, which we're gonna get into. Her name is Sheila Vand. Sheila Vand. She was and Katia Winter, whom I've heard of before. But Sheila Vand kind of steals the show as this mysterious character that Justin Long. We're going to get into this movie because I think it's very insightful in a lot of ways and speaks to our time because, well, as you may have noticed that the Wave also shares a similarity with Aquarius, which is symbolized by waves. Is it coincidental? Oh, maybe not. But it doesn't really matter when it comes to the symbolic and psychic topography of this movie and really where we are. So we're going to get into the eclipse tonight. We're going to take another look at the eclipse and where we are with it. It is eclipsing right now, 9/11. So we're in eclipse mode. This show is happening during the eclipse. So if you're here, we're all sharing this in real time together. And, we've been in this eclipse window for a few days now. And I've already experienced a fair amount of intensity around this eclipse. And if the first one, a little bit, this eclipse, yep, definitely. And maybe I'll share some of that later in the show. And so we're in it now, and we've got, I think we have 2 more moons this year. Let's get the eclipse calendar out. I think the next 4, I think the next 4 eclipses are blood moons, if I'm not mistaken. So let's look at these eclipses here. What else has Sheila Van been in? Let's see. She's April 27th. So she's a Taurus. She was born in LA, California, 1985. And some of the movies that she has been in: Snowpiercer, the TV series. She plays Zara Farami. She plays a lot of, I guess, exotic characters in the TV series Undone, which I've never seen. I don't really watch TV series, but apparently Undone is a TV series, and she plays a character named Farnaz. So we have Zara Farami and then Farnaz. So is she playing a type? Looks like she's doing TV series simultaneously. That's interesting. Movie-wise, Land of Dreams, The Fall of the House of Usher, The Rental, The Wave, White Echo, Triple Frontier, She's Missing, Viper Club, Prospect, We the Animals, Aardvark. So she's not a household name as far as actresses go. She was in Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. She was in Minority Report. That was a TV miniseries. Well, let's see. Anything else? Lots of TV stuff. A Girl Walks Alone at Night. Some of you might be familiar with some of these. She was in the movie Argo. She played Sahar. So she has a tendency of playing ethnic characters. She looks a little ethnic. Yep. Okay, so we're going to get into that movie tonight, and we're going to talk about this shooting. We may even look at Alexander Dugan's chart again. Well, we didn't really look at him last time, did we? We didn't look at him last time because I think I moved on to some other subject matter. But we'll take a look at Dugan's chart and just kind of recap things that have been happening this last week, because this week fucking went off. And it went off in the crypto world, which we talked about. And when you get into astrology, okay, when you get into these fixed signs, especially with the nodes, there are presets, and you can hit any number of presets within those nodes, especially now, because the script is pretty blatant. Okay, the script is like, it has never been more clear. And if you're not following along at home and understanding what the script is, woe be unto you. I feel sorry, because you will be hit by a wave right upside your head. So the script is playing out on a global level, and they are pulling the plug on the system. Okay, this is what's happening, and they're literally. So in football, they have this theory where the defense wants to shrink the field for, let's say, the other team's quarterback. So what they'll do is they may line up heavy coverage on one side of the field, and then they'll force the quarterback to throw to the other side of the field, which may not be his best side. Okay, so I don't want to get into the specifics of football too much, because it'll bore the shit out of some people. But in football, they have these things called hash marks. And if the ball goes to one side on a hash mark, you're literally playing from like one part of the field. They don't always put the ball in the center of the field in football. They'll put it to the nearest hash mark. So then what will happen, right, is, let's say the ball is on the nearest hash mark, and then the team will try to take away the other side, which is more wide open, where there's more room to run plays and things like that. So they might overload on that side. They may put more players on that side, and they'll force the quarterback or the team to go into a narrow part of the field, in which case they have, less opportunity to make a play, gain yardage, and yada yada yada. Well, this is what's happening now. They're limiting the field. Like they're okay, we're going to shut down as much as this part of the field as we can, and so people are being basically herded into tighter and tighter columns. This is what's going on, and it's happening with the price of fuel, the availability of fuel, not just price but availability, the price of diesel and the availability of diesel. So these are all really primary things, right? These are primary elements that we need to have in order to get by. And the reason why we need them is because trucks bring goods to markets and or grocery stores, right? Whatever the markets are, it could be a Walmart. You could, get a battery for your car or something like that, at a Walmart or AutoZone. Like there are trucks that do this, right? I mean, it's pretty common knowledge. And then they bring things like, oh, guess what? Baby formula to stores. Now, the baby formula thing is kind of weird because I never had baby formula. My kid never had baby formula. So baby formula has not been a thing in my life at any stage. But for some people, it is a thing. I'm not sure it's the best thing, but it is a thing. And some women are unable to lactate, so they're not looking for a wet nurse. It's like, okay, we're gonna try to find the best baby formula we can, mix it, and give it to the kid. You know what that's like. It's like another variation on the toilet paper crisis, because the toilet paper crisis took everybody right into their root chakra, right into their root chakra, because obviously that's what you do, right? Use toilet paper, and then you basically take care of business in the root chakra. And if you don't have any toilet paper, then you're going to feel less secure, and you're going to get triggered at the root chakra level. It's exactly what, and they had plenty of fucking toilet paper. They knew exactly what they were doing. We're going to hold it back. We're going to hold it back because we want to make people become infantilized again. Is that interesting? Infantilized again. So when these things happen with the baby formula, of course, it's going to impact mothers and their children, which for all intents and purposes is criminal. It really is criminal to deny or not be able to have these things. We know that they're there because they're showing up in other places. They're showing up in places that are compromised. They've got plenty of cases of this stuff, and they're showing up places areas that are compromised. So that really hits people, right? That gets people agitated. It takes people back down into their root chakra. And anytime you deal with children and or infants, this is a universal chord that is struck, and people will lose their fucking minds when it comes to infants and children. And in some cases, they probably should, because what's being done is a wholesale manipulation of the psychological relationship between people, their children, both real in the flesh, and their relationship with their quote unquote inner child. Because we all have memories, some more cogent and on the surface than others, about what it's like to go through a trauma as a child. This is all Taurus and Scorpio stuff, right? We saw this last week. We saw the baby formula thing really kick up. Well, I talked about this on my show during the week, which is 15 minutes of flame. That's ovflame.com. And when you look at the story of breastfeeding and lactating and nurturing, what do we have? We have Isis. We have Isis, which is considered to be the universal mother, right? Should we do a little Isis pictorial here? There you go. Let's look at some Isis imagery. She always looks like Isis always looks super hot, right? Isis is a total babe, but never really portrayed in a lot of ways as kind of an earth goddess. In a lot of cases, Isis is like this earth goddess that would be on, I don't know what, like Jet magazine or something like that. She doesn't really resemble the more earthy version of Venus, or the Earth Mother. Let me see if I can find one where she's nursing. You got these hydrocephalic heads with Isis. Let's see if we can find a good nursing one. So here she goes. She's looking a little thicker here. So this is Isis nursing Horus. Dedicated by Angkor, son of Parish Bana Bejedit. That's not too bad. Son of Parish Bana Bejedit and Heratib. This is supposedly from 644 to 332 BC. Let's see if we make this bigger. So yeah, I mean, she's looking a little wider here, right? There's little baby Horus going for the breastfeed. How come nobody ever did a brand called Isis Infant Formula or something like that? That would have been amazing. Isis brand infant formula. I mean, that's a no fucking brainer. All right, let me see if there's another image here of the lactating goddess. Let's go back to this one. Here we go. This is a bronze statue right here. Where's this from? Roughly same period. And now here Isis looking a little bit on the thin side. We see the horns. This is almost like a full-on symbol of Taurus Venus right here. She's not giving up much. Okay, you can have your cookies. You can have your cookies with Isis's milk. There she is. Oh, we'll zoom in there. Oh, Horus is getting a handful. Horus looks a little European there, doesn't he? Looks like a little man. What about Isis's face? I like the zoom feature. And look at this. We get to keep all this detail. Pretty cool. All right. She's looking like an alien there. That's an alien. Doesn't that look like a fucking alien face? It's like an alien reptile face right there. Almost looks like you have a little face over here too. Although that's just my imagination, I'm sure. So yeah, little Horus getting a handful. So Isis probably has the body of the woman who is on the modern the dry fast. She's on the modern dry fast diet. Let's see what else we have in terms of Isis. A couple of different renditions here. Yeah, here's 36 Isis nursing. These are Getty images. Isis looking a little thicker here. But you get the, here's blue Isis. Pretty cool, right? Different headdress. Who's this one? Let's see this one. This is a big one. 2000. Oh, this is on Etsy. I'm on somebody's Etsy page. You get the healing nursing, the child Horus black unique stone with only $69. And by the way, it's made in Egypt. How about that? I wanted to zoom in. All right, let's see. This is a little replica there. Little baby Horus. Right? So this is an image that is deeply embedded in our psyche. This goes back to one of the first goddess archetypes on this planet and breastfeeding. So when we get into this thing where we don't have any baby formula, again, it starts to hit us at this like very primal level in a lot of ways. because then we think about the kids that are emaciated and all these things that could happen, and then the grave injustice to the mothers who don't have the requisite breast milk, or a troubled relationship with, because not all mothers can breastfeed. Some kids don't really take to it. I don't know why. It might be because of their teeth. Who knows? But sometimes it doesn't work, and so, or maybe sometimes people give up really quickly. But that was part of this whole last week, right? And and we're in the lunar phase now, because we're moving out of that solar phase, or the phase of the solar eclipse. And so when we get into the moon, we're getting into maternal material. The sun is the father and the moon is the mother. When the child reaches the first Saturn square, which is at the age of 7, the father moves into the role of Saturn in the child's life. This is what happens. 7 rings. Saturn has 7 rings, although apparently has 8 now. But Saturn has 7 rings. So in the first Saturn square, which is the age of 7 in a child's life, the father morphs from the sun to the Saturnian figure. And it's still fun, and there's still fun in games, but there's this maturation that takes place, rules and order kick in at that time, which is very Saturnian. And then by the time we get out to the age of 14, which is the second Saturn cycle, the child really separates out during the Saturn opposition. So the father is Saturn at that point. Clearly the father is Saturn. And it's been a 7-year journey from the age of 7 to the age of 14. And then the young woman or the young man separates himself out and tries to find their own path. So until the age of 7, the father is the sun in the chart, and the moon is the mother. So what do you got there? Is that a cricket? We got Jasper on Bug Patrol. That's a cricket. You can have that. You can mess with that. Why do they always come out on the Sunday night show? It's like, I'm here in this space a lot, and I don't really see these critters. Or on Sunday night 2 weeks ago, it was like, there's a lot of critters happening here. So now we're in the lunar phase, right? We've come out of the solar phase of the solar eclipse. Now we're in the lunar phase, and the week leading up to the lunar phase, talk of mothers, talk of shortages, right? This has all been happening. And then, of course, we had the crypto crash, which we talked about, because these things are going to line up in certain ways. When we get into crypto and hard assets, we're really polarized with Taurus, Scorpio, and Taurus being hard assets and Scorpio being soft assets. And of course, this isn't just your normal series of eclipses, and it's because of the position of Uranus in relationship to the sun. And Uranus is radical. This is the nature of Uranus. It brings change. So even the most stable coin, right? Even the most stable of the stable coins in the crypto world are going to go through a volatile period of time. And it's the relationship with Uranus, because Uranus brings change. Although if you go to a store now, there's a better than average change. You won't get any change. That happened to me on Friday. I wanted some change for the air pump. Oh, sorry, can't do that. Well, why the fuck not? Well, the air pump's not broken. Well, of course, the air pump's broken. The air pump is broken. It's not working, of course. And there's a national change shortage. National change shortage. We can't give out change. That's the policy. I said, no, that's your policy. That is not the policy. It's your policy, your store's policy. Let's get that clear. So what did we do? What happened? What went down? Luna, which was, I think it was like 185. I stopped paying attention to cryptos a while back. I became obsessive with it. But I think it was at 185, and now it's at like bust. It's at 0. There's like nothing left, right? Hello, Luna. We're in a lunar eclipse phase, and it got absolutely drained because it was part of this this ecosystem, and the ecosystem was faulty. So we're seeing panic in crypto world. I do think, we had Misaki on Friday, and if you want to get an update of his prognostication, it's right here on this channel. So if you're watching this channel, go to this channel and the show prior to this channel, or prior to tonight's show, which is with Misaki, and you'll see an image of the Doge dog and some hemp in the background, because that was really the theme. It was cryptocurrency, what's going on with crypto, biochar, which is a very fascinating alchemical material, which is essentially burnt wood, and it's not completely burnt, but it's burnt enough, and you can do some amazing things with biochar. So we talked about that, and we talked about hemp. We were deep into Taurus on Friday's show. So if you don't watch the Friday show, it's on this channel. It's a little bit different. Sometimes I talk about astrology, or sometimes it comes up like with, well, it did this last week because we were talking about Taurus things. And that was conscious on my part that I was going to bring these people on to talk about these topics because it's timely astrologically. But it's not the focus of the Friday show. It's usually an interview format. Now, don't knock that light over. Oh my God, this could be off. This could be ugly. Get over. Okay. All right, now come around. He's toying with the cricket. Now come around. There you go. He's playing soccer with the cricket. Yeah, he hasn't done anything to you. I know you're bored. This is very exciting. He's like Ronaldo with this cricket. I'm sorry, I'm not getting up to save the cricket. I don't think my cat will do anything. Anyway, so we're in the dark moon now, and it's 9 o'clock here. I think the eclipse phase started about an hour ago in New York City. Well, that's what I had at time to. We're going to look at the eclipse chart tonight. And yes, we will get into the shooting that took place in Buffalo. Of course, we have Taurus symbolism with Buffalo, New York, the upstate area, and Peyton Gedron, what a name, who is the supposed shooter with the 180-page manifesto and connections to the Black Sun. Yes, the Black Sun symbolism has reared its rune-like head once again. So we're going to look one more time at the Black Sun and its relationship to the Azov battalion in Ukraine. It's their symbol. It is their symbol. It's the symbol they chose to use to represent their battalion. Now, they started their watch, theoretically, on May 5th, 2014. That's when they flipped, right? That's when Ukraine got flipped. And that's when Vicky Nuland and the neocons took over and started handing out muffins to everybody. I promise you tonight, I will deliver some inspiration. When we start talking about The Wave, the movie The Wave, it's kind of an inspiring movie. And so we'll go there. We'll get into some inspiration here. All right. Let me see who's here tonight. I've been talking for a few minutes. Let's see who we have in the gallery. Or are we on YouTube? Let's go to YouTube. Hello, YouTube. If I had it to do all over again, I probably would have done a channel on cooking and cats. Let's see, who do we have here? Not cooking cats, but cooking and cats. All right, we got Mr. Charles Mazak. What's going on, Charles? Love of Scorpio. Crickets, they mean good fortune. Oh, I think we're a little deep into the chat. Mickey King, she was murdered for important state college. She was strong, got away. Okay, I'm not sure what we're talking about because I'm coming on. There's my man Steve. What's going on? Thor at the door. CC Jones in the house. Looks like we have the lovely and talented Joan S. here. Steve Letro. What's going on, Steve? Good to see you. Susie Gemini. Cato, T. Jordan. I came to my senses. It borders 5-year floodplain by a few feet. Okay, so somebody's talking about land, I think. Kelly B. Lost several family, including my mother. Yep, these are tough times for sure, Kelly. Sandy D. What's going on in the house? Good for you. Thanks for being here. There's Sony. Sony, what's going on, Sony? There's Jonas. Provocateur Astrology lives in Dallas. The crickets come put with the TGE humidity. I like the crickets. What about hope and change? Ba-dum. Yes. Don't you remember? Oh, I am hope. I am hope, and I am the change. Who didn't see that coming? Fuck. You could just see that coming from a country mile. Long ways away. Long ways away. Yeah. All right. Who else do we have? There's my man. Masaki. Luna went from 120 to 0. There we go. Let's see. Look at Steve. Steve coming in on the lowercase caps. Steve's a Libra. He's the nicest guy. But I'm telling you, you don't want to fuck this. He played linebacker in high school. He didn't just play linebacker. He played linebacker on like one of those deep South Florida teams. You know what I mean? Right? So, I'm sure Steve had to prove himself a little bit every now and then. So super nice guy, but don't cross Thor at the door. Wendy Quintana in the house. What's going on, Wendy? Cassandra Lynn. Nice to see you. Sandra Duncan. Change Shore has been over a year now. It has been over a year, but it went away. We had plenty of change here. There was plenty of change. I didn't experience any change shores except on Friday. Friday felt like something just mildly pre-apocalyptic. I'm telling you. It felt mildly pre-apocalyptic because when I went to the gas station, there's all these cars at the gas station. And I live in Texas and I kind of live in a countrified area. So the people that roll into the gas station, Ford F-150, Ford F-250, maybe you get the odd Dodge Ram, guys wearing fluorescent vests, coolers, Sixers, 12 Packers, right? I mean, this is the Friday crowd at the Stripes Sunoco. Then you have travelers. People are trying to have a really nice time over the weekend. Come out here and drink some wine. But it felt intense. There was an edge. There was a serious edge. There was a long line inside too. And I decided I wanted to pay cash for my gas that day. And that's where I experienced sorry, I ain't got no change. It wasn't that bad. But I hadn't experienced that for a while. It's like, change, no problem. Yeah, sure. But then those worthless piece of shit pneumatic pumps. Remember when that was free? Do you remember when air was free? Water was free? It was free. And some bean counter somewhere said, let's outsource this and let's charge for this. Let's make a little money on the side. No more free air. No more free water. No. All right, let's see what else we have. Solomon Johnson, repent for the kingdom is at hand and foot too. Not just hand and foot. Let's see. Rob Scanlon, what's going on, Rob? Good to see you. Rob Chopra in the house. Look at that. Speaking of Aquarius. Steve, you're classic. Let's see who else we have. Marty, what's going on, Marty? Good to see you. There's my man, Thomas Jordan. Wendy Eater, many businesses here in Phoenix will not accept cash for payment. Money has germs. So I was talking with my buddy Ben down under in Australia, and they're requiring biometric information for you to bank now. So yes, not all banks yet, but soon. I know. You should have your own bank. You should have your own bank. Jasper Savings and Loan. But yeah, so they're doing that in down under. You're going to have to provide, for your security. For your security, we're going to need your retinal scan. I know. You don't have to worry about banking. The only thing you have to worry about is the amount of cat food I have on hand for you. And you're fine. I got you covered. I got you covered. You're good. And whatever you don't eat, I'm sure in a pinch, he wouldn't mind sharing. Echoes of Mad Max. All right, who else we have? Misbehaving. Misbehaving too. What's going on? Aline. Hey, Aline. Good to see you. What's going on? K Sobchak, 61. It's like Walter Sobchak, but K Sobchak. Love a Scorpio. Kitties love. You know what? He let that cricket live. Jasper that's how good he is. He just got in a little soccer practice and he just let him be. You are not a cricket killer. You're not. Yes. Our resident vegan who might show up here might really be proud of you for not eating that cricket head. All right, who else do we have here? Fran Santelli. Hi, Fran. Good to see you. D. Wolf. Raining in Michigan. Good. I hope it's something you've been waiting for up there. My man, Ryan. What's going on, Ryan? Yes, if you like the show, hit the thumbs up. Hit that like button. And, of course, subscribe. Portland State is downtown. The energy is so awful there. I can feel the astral entities are thick as we go to the courthouse. Trial starts in 2 weeks. I'm having a nervous breakdown. Oh, Mickey, can I recommend something to you for your nervous breakdown? I have just the thing for you. Just the thing for you. And you know what I did? I went by my buddy Christopher Lynch's store on Saturday. Me and the doctor went down there. And Chris he's a freaking mad scientist. I took a little video of the store, and I'll play it tomorrow on the show. And just a brief kind of flyby of Chris's place. And he's always working on new formulas for CBD. And I have to admit, I got a few of the under the counter formulas, if you know what I'm saying. But it's great stuff. And I'm a big fan of the gummies, and which, I will consume at night before I go to bed, and it helps. It's great. And he's got some new CBD that he's just put on the website, which is great for anxiety. Okay. Great for anxiety. I didn't take that one, but I took some other CBD that he had about a month ago, and I got my tooth worked on, and I needed to be a good patient. So I took some CBD, and that with a little bit of nitrous oxide, I was fine. But the mindset going into the actual procedure to get my filling drilled out and then have this crown shaped and everything, I was fine. I was fine. It was so, Mickey, if you're interested, right here, my buddy Chris has the highest quality CBD, good stuff. And if you spend $100 or more, you'll get $20 worth of product. And sometimes Chris will give you some of the goodies, some of the experimental stuff he's working on. Now, when I say experimental, it's things that he's actually tried himself. So it's not like you're the guinea pig. In many cases, you'll get something he has set aside for the $100 threshold, and he'll send that off with you. He's very generous. So True Hemp Science right there. There's the link, .com/reference/23, and then 15 mins. You put that in, that's your little code. He knows you're coming from this world, which means you're going to get the goodies. Now, I am hopefully going to get a Chattaria blend for one of his products. We might have our own exclusive blend. I put it in his ear hole on Saturday. So, and Chris is he's such a cool guy. And the thing I love about him is that he is really into like experimenting and creating new things all the time. So, he's having a lot of fun. The Piscean mad scientist at True Hemp Science. And if you're in Austin, oh, by the way, I need to say this. He's actually looking for help. So if you are in the Austin area and you would like to work at a really cool CBD shop that also does mail order fulfillment, and for a cool guy, and you're looking for a second job or maybe first job and you're in the area, let me know. Shoot me an email. And because Chris is looking for some help. So who is looking for help these days? There's a lot of need for people to actually step up and do jobs. All right, let's see who else do we have here. Artist Sears in the house. Leon, Vito, Vincent, Radway. What's going on, Leon? Good to see you. Let's see who else we have. Fran, what did we say, Fran? France, we got Fran. Let's see. Chi hated CBD. She reacted badly to it. Almost every substance, to be fair. Not everybody can handle it, process it. Abella Soul. Hello, Abella. Cassandra Lynn. What's going on, Cassandra? So, Mickey, I brought hey, there's Carol. What's going on? And Marissa. So, Mickey, I brought that up for you. It's 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Oh, it's 15 minutes. Oh, thank you. I have to fix that. I thought he put 15 minutes. Thank you, Chris. Chris and Steve actually got, by the way, Christopher Lynch was psyched that he was filling an order for the Crimmies. He told me that. He said, I'm such a fanboy. Why don't we get into the eclipse? It is the chart of the moment, too, by the way. Maybe just a little bit off, but close enough. Why don't we check it out? Let's get into it. So we can kill. I'll swap that out. Thanks for reminding me, Steve. Let's do this. Okay. All right. The lunar eclipse. We have such a deep and intense collective memory of eclipses and comets that they always bring up some level of apprehension, anxiety, or dread. The comets will show up. Sometimes you'll see the comet path because a lot of times they show up again and again and again. And every now and then we'll get one of those comets that just pops in out of nowhere. Oh, look at this comet. Where did it come from? The amazing thing about comets is when you look at the comets on the spectroscope, vis-a-vis like the electric universe, look, the comets actually pass through the sun. And when I first saw that, I was like, that's fucking mind-blowing, right? Because you would think that these comets, which are supposedly have these tails with, dust and ice and, all the things that they accumulate while they're going through space, you would think that when they hit the sun, that it would melt. It doesn't happen. They go right through the sun and come out the other side. And so supposedly it's the sun, the electric sun, that is the form of attraction for these comets. And the whole idea of the electric universe really begins to light up and illuminate itself when you see something like this. It's kind of mind-blowing. So let's talk about this dark moon, this eclipse moon. And this is a pretty intense one. And what's interesting about this moon is that there's absolutely nothing around it. So what we have is we have a bucket chart. And a bucket chart is when this chart looks like, this is a spigot. So it's a spigot bucket. The bowl chart would be, let's say if the moon was here, right? It would comprise half of the chart. So that would be a bowl. So a bucket or a spigot chart is when there is a focal point, and the focal point here is the eclipse moon. So everything is moving. Everything is moving from this part of the chart into this direction. So there's and when you have something like this, when you have an eclipse moon, almost at this point of what they call it's not a singleton, because it has a lot of different angles going on with all these other planets, but it is certainly singled out. So emotions running high. Emotions are running high, and they've been running high for the past few days. And, dealing with the images and the realities of death. And of course, whatever this thing that happened in Buffalo is part of the story. And they were already going to Biden, who is a Scorpio, and this eclipse is around his sun. He is a Scorpio, and he was already going to speak about guns tomorrow. So now they're locked and loaded, pardon the pun, about speaking on the subject. Because, look, there's Chiron, right? There's Chiron at 14 Aries. Here's Mars at 23 Pisces. So we have a Mars-Neptune conjunction. Anytime you have a Mars, and by the way, we can back that Mars up to Friday. I believe the shooting happened on Saturday. And nothing is as it seems when you have a tight conjunction with Neptune. So we're talking 22 degrees. That's within a 5-degree orb. Like the 3-degree orb is when things are really challenging. Like those planets, in theory, are so close, or those aspects are so close, that the influence is very hard to dissect and digest. And I've talked about this one chart before. There was this one friend of mine who, very interested and talented person, had, I think, like 6 planets. They're all in Libra. This is the 1974, I believe, stellium in Libra. I believe it's 1974. And so there was Uranus in Libra. I think there was also, was it Neptune Scorpio? So Neptune was in Sag that time. I believe there was also Jupiter in Libra. Saturn, I think it was a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Mercury, Sun, Venus. The only thing that she didn't have, it might have been, she had Mars in Libra too. I think she had Mercury and Scorpio at 0. Everything else, huge Libra. And all within, I think, 5 or 6 planets, all within 4 degrees. Like, that's a crazy stellium. Crazy stellium. So when you get all those planets together, they're operating like one, like, mega planet. And as an astrologer, those are always the more, they're rare. Those charts are rare, but they're difficult to untangle because there's so much going on. Like the relationship between one planet and another is just, it's crazy, right? Crazy, crazy, crazy. So when somebody goes through a major transit, and in that case, we're talking specifically about Saturn and Libra, crossing all those planets, that could become a major crisis in a person's chart and in their life. It can be a huge crisis. And it could take them, now, it could be an opportunity, because I'm not always as down on Saturn as other people. But when it hits, and it's hitting all those planets at once, and it's having this very intense, catalytic, cataclysmic kind of energy in the person's life, there's only 2 ways it can go, right? You can either ride the wave and deal with Saturn as limitations that ultimately can be provident, or you can deal with Saturn and the limitations and not be able to deal with it. And those kinds of transits can really set people back if they don't have any real grounding as to what they're going through. And even if they do, because the stellium is so tight, again, like 5 planets within 4 degrees of each other, And especially when you're talking about Uranus in the mix, it gets crazy. It gets intense. And it's not always manageable, just not manageable. So I've seen this before with these intense stelliums, right? But this is not that, right? This is like hanging out there alone. So it's isolated. What we're talking about Mars, Neptune, and the close stelliums. Let's talk about that. Because if you're going to have a shooting event, you'd want to have a Mars Neptune conjunction, especially in Pisces, because you get to have things like scapegoats and martyrs and all the things that you would need to theoretically be a part of a mass shooting event, at least astrologically, like a Mars Neptune and it also can be at times a bit difficult, although when you get into the weeds around this, it's not as difficult as one may think. So I'll cover more of the weeds tomorrow, by the way. But this is where, so what's going to happen here, right, is that Mars is going to, by the end of the month, it's going to move into Aries. So we already have Jupiter in Aries. And of course, we have this thing that happens in Buffalo. We have Jupiter in Aries, 0 degrees. And we're dealing with also a lot of really pent up energy because Jupiter has been in Pisces for a while. And Jupiter and Pisces can really conflate a person's sense of reality in a lot of ways, for better or worse. Sometimes it can conflate that feeling to a point where people can feel very exalted with the Jupiter transit in Pisces, especially where it's been. I mean, if you're in a place where you have immense faith and just really a powerful sense that where the future is going, and the future is going in a divine direction, the Jupiter transit can be very powerful. Everything that happens can become a sense of prophecy. So if you're looking at the Revelation script, like you're getting high because Revelation theoretically is all around us. Now, I do believe, this is just my own personal belief, I believe Revelation's already happened. I think we're in a postscript. Maybe that's, a chapter for another show. But if you're in the script now and you see this and you see what's going on, you're like, man, this is it. This is my time. This is our time. We're all marching, to Armageddon, right? And it's fine. It's great. My Lord is coming. So if you're a born again Christian, this Jupiter transit of Pisces is right up your alley. You're like, bring it on. Let's go. I'm ready. I'm ready to punch my ticket, jump on out of here, hit the rapture switch, and look down and have some popcorn and Diet Coke and watch the world go to hell in a handbasket, right? So if you're in this position or in that place, this is not a bad time for you. This Jupiter and Pisces, not a bad time at all. You're okay. Now, that's an extreme version. Even if you have a great deal of faith, and every day you theoretically get closer and closer to your Lord and Savior, Jupiter in Pisces, that is a deep reality check for you that you're okay with. Well, Jupiter's moved into Aries, and we know that Aries has to deal with things like conflict and war, and it's only going to get to, I think, 6 degrees. So we're not going to get completely and utterly compromised in terms of some of these squares that are coming up. Although the lunar square in Capricorn could be quite interesting, especially when the moon hits Pluto, which is now retrograde. That could be interesting. Well, the first lunar square will happen fairly soon. So tomorrow, when we move into the latter stages of Monday, we're going to have a 48-hour period with the moon in Sagittarius. So we're talking like Wednesday. Wednesday, when that moon hits 0 Capricorn, squares Jupiter. I think that's a time where they're really playing upon people's fears, right? People's fears. And we know that Capricorn rules things like hierarchies and governments, and the moon tends to be emotional. So get ready for the post-eclipse wave around hype and fear. It's coming. That's easy to see. You know it's coming. It always comes after the fact. And we've had a number of shootings recently that did not cohere to the industry standard of what a shooting should look like. And very quickly after these shootings happened, the news of the shooting went away because it didn't fit the profile. Now we have somebody that fits the profile. Boy, do they fit the profile. They've got a manifesto. They've got the names of the people they got run down in Waukesha, Wisconsin, etched upon their gun. I mean, if you want a smoking gun, literally you got it with Peyton Gedron. Now, just because they have a live suspect, that doesn't always mean that that live suspect ever has any kind of media time or any kind of court time or any kind of trial time. Because some of these people, they just go by the wayside. John Ernest is one of them, and I've talked about him before. This is the guy that supposedly shot up the Chabad Center just outside of San Diego. Was it Poway? Poway, right? Whatever happened to him? Young guy supposedly got radicalized. And I've gone down that rabbit hole before. That dude, he's got some weird stuff going on with the Aurora shooter. Very weird stuff. I covered that in one of my shows. They're both from the same area, Rancho Santa Fe and Poway. They're right there. Same little neck of the woods there in San Diego, sort of North San Diego area. And there's other things that connect them, which I don't really want to get into. Robert Lee Bowers, who was another Chabad shooter at a temple in Pittsburgh, well, he just disappeared. He was never tried. And again, what are you looking for? You're looking for some kind of a footprint. This guy had a minimal footprint for somebody in their 50s and just started all of a sudden making TikTok videos. And what did this guy do? He live streamed on Twitch. He live streamed this event on Twitch. Well, if somebody who's in a position of power and you want to take away guns, and you also want to shut down a platform like Twitch, which is pretty unregulated, right? It's a pretty unregulated platform. I don't think there's any coincidence that this happened on Twitch. Well, this is perfect. You get to kill two birds with one stone. So as we see Mars move forward and it moves into Aries, and we're the end of the month, I think the 25th, so 10 days from now, I think that's a critical time. That's a really critical time. And I've talked about this every show for the last probably month and a half. We have not seen Mars in the sky since October. It has been hanging out. It is behind the sun, right? And then guess what? It begins to emerge. It begins to emerge and we see it. And the first sign of it is the conjunction with Jupiter. And what does that mean? It means it's going to get bigger, right? Bigger, whatever the bigger piece of this thing is. And theoretically, supposedly there's a war going on in Ukraine, which again is one of the most bizarre wars I've ever run across. It's a war where there are things that are happening or things that aren't happening. It's what's happening with reality now. There are things that are theoretically real and happening, and there are things that are not. So we see we're in this melange of this strange synthesis of reality and what I call hyper reality. And it's very, very challenging to get a bead on what's real and what's not real at this point in time. Again, we're in these final degrees of Neptune in the Scorpionic decan. It's challenging to get to the bottom of the dark well. So here we are, and we're going to, this thing that happened over the weekend in Buffalo, we're going to look at, I got this guy's birth date. So we're going to try to take a peek at his chart. Again, we're theorizing this is a real person. And I haven't spent a ton of time breaking down the incongruities, although I've spent some, and there are quite a few, by the way. But we're going to take a look at his chart. So this is all about the fear now, right? This is about the fear right there. It's all about the fear. And boy, are they drumming up the fear. The fear machine is cranking hard. You've got the fear with the formula. You've got the fear with the crypto. Now you've got the fear with the killer on the loose. He's got an AR-15, right? There's all kinds of crazy, heightened fear energy and fear symbolism, and we're in an eclipse. So everything is going to get amplified. And now we have the moon squaring Saturn, which is, I'm just going to tell you, that is not a great square. Not a great square. Because what do we know about Saturn, especially in Aquarius? It is one rule for all. One rule for all. And it is usually the rule that is the most lowest common denominator. It is not the rule or the law that ennobles people. It is the rule and the law which subjugates people and seeds more power into a centralized command. This is clearly what Saturn in Aquarius is. I've seen it before. I've talked about it before. If you're new to the show, I'm not going to go through the historical references here because there are a lot of people here that have been following for a while, but I will go back into one, and that was in 2021 when Saturn went into Aquarius and everybody experienced one thing simultaneously. And you know what that thing is. It was a lockdown. And there was one person who was the high priest of the lockdown, and that was Tony Fauci, who's a Capricorn, whose sign is ruled by Saturn. Okay, so we can see this, right? We saw it firsthand. One rule for all, one law for all, and there would be somebody who would be a scientist, Aquarian, right, or Aquarianism, who would be the person that would be the high priest, laying down the one law or the one code for all. And then, and I think this is the part that is interesting. When you look at the centers of power, so theoretically, the centers of power started as the churches, and we're going to take them out of their potentially Tartarian reference point, but they started as the church. So then we went from the church to what? The Capitol, right? The Capitol building. In some cases, this would also be associated with the castle where the monarchs would live, right? And so they became larger theoretically than the churches. And then we went from the Capitol to what? To the modern skyscraper. And the modern skyscraper being the greatest symbolic of like phallic power. You got the Sears building, the Sears Tower. You've got the Twin Towers, right? You got the massive skyscraper in Indonesia, Malaysia. So we've seen this kind of movement towards power through architecture. One could make a case, although it is certainly a step down, but one could make a case that the most powerful structure in the land now is the hospital. And the hospital is really a strange amalgam because hospitals are incorporated. They're incorporated. So they are part of the corporate world. So they are Capricornian. Hospitals are Capricornian. They are. They're there to make a profit. Hospitals are also very 12th house, right? So this eclipse in New York City taking place in the 12th house. And this eclipse, by the way, when you look at the eclipse path, comes right up from Antarctica and hits the seaboard, eastern seaboard, comes right up through Texas as well. It actually mirrors, in many ways, the solar eclipse path of 2024, which maybe we'll talk about next week. Big eclipse, huge eclipse, 2 years away. The eclipse that predates or presages the presidential election of 2024. So I was very dubious and skeptical about the 2020 election, just in terms of actually having it. And we did theoretically. We theoretically had it. 2024, I'm very dubious of. I'd be very surprised if we have an actual election in 2024 because of the impact of this eclipse. We'll talk about it next week. It gives you a reason to come back here. So the hospital is a 12th house institution because nobody really goes there unless you work there or you're sick, right? Total 12th house institution. But we also know that it has an embodiment of being corporate, right? They're corporatized. There's no hospitals out there that are 501, C's, right? They're generally not. They're big business. They're huge money. And what did we see during the height of the lockdown? We saw these fucking dance routines. We saw these electric slides and Bollywoods and all this shit that was really weird, right? Just really weird shit. And that's really group oriented. So we saw doctors and nurses as these groups, which is very Aquarian. So the hospital became this very strange amalgam, this interzone of three separate houses and three separate signs. Capricorn, the 10th house, because they're incorporated and they're their own, and they're there for a profit, and they have a tacit relationship with the government. Aquarius, because they use science, and because we saw so many great dance routines that they had the time and the opportunity to work on. And then Pisces in the 12th house, because nobody ever really goes there. And if you go there, especially now, there's a good chance you're going to fucking die. I don't know anybody that really wants to go to a hospital now. I don't think anybody ever really wanted to go to a hospital. But before, if you had to go back in the benevolent days of care, and I think, man, I went to a hospital. When did I go to a hospital? I think the last time I went to a hospital was 2017. That was a trip. That was a real trip. I didn't really want to go, but I felt like because of what was going on with my body, I probably had to go. Anyway, I don't want to get off the talk here, off the commentary. But look at that. I mean, 12th house, that's where this moon, and that's where the South Node at 23 and 22 are hanging out. So we can see something here just about the placement of the eclipse, especially for New York City. And if we were to kind of move the location a little bit, especially if we moved it west a little bit, it'd still be in the 12th house. We could move it west by probably about 300 miles, 400 miles, 500, and still be in the 12th house. So we're really talking, East Coast here at the time of the eclipse. So something, we can just look at this, right? Something is being generated at a much deeper level with this eclipse. And it's hard to get a handle on it because, number one, it's in Scorpio, and we know it's dark, and we know that it's in this case, it's deep and it's otherworldly. And I would say that there is, and I'm not a big like dark energy and satanic and demonic person, because that you can turn anywhere now and bump into that shit. But I think there's something to this, right? So for me, the energy of this eclipse does represent some kind of a summoning, right? Because you're bringing something in from the 12th house. This is where we leave, and this is really where we begin to enter in too. When you're born, you get your ascendant. That's the first breath you take. The doctor looks at the time and says, okay, boom, crowned here, boom, done, right? That's where you get your ascendant. So where are you coming from? You're coming from out here. You're coming from your mother's womb, right? And you've been hanging out down there, and you've been taking in those influences for 9 months. But you originally came from out here. You came from out here, and your spirit emerges as your body emerges when you take your first breath. So when you leave the chart, right, when you leave your body, in many cases, you'll go through the 12th house. People are born in a hospital. People die in a hospital. It's a train station. It's what it is. Hospitals are train stations, and they import souls and they export souls. I'll never forget. One time I was delivering flowers. I used to deliver flowers part-time in the Bay Area. And I had some crazy days with these flowers. There's always a story. And I remember one day, I'll never forget this day. I think it was like Valentine's Day, because I'd usually be hired to do stuff around Valentine's Day because I had so many orders. And I knew this guy who had a florist. And so he would hire me for these. And that was a good deliverer. I was a good delivery driver. And that was back all pre, Google Maps and shit. You had the Thomas guide. You had the fucking Thomas guide. And I liked it. I enjoyed it. It was fun. Anyway, my first delivery of that day was I was delivering flowers to a couple, a man and a woman. Imagine that. A man and a woman, and the woman had the baby. The birthing person that I would call a woman had a baby. And they were there together. And I walked into their hospital room with the flowers, and he was lying on the bed with her. The baby was on the bed with them. It was Bubble City. It was beautiful. And they didn't even know I was there. They were floating on a cloud of oxytocin. And then at the end of the day, I went to a funeral parlor, and I had to deliver flowers to somebody who it was for their funeral. They were passing away. They'd passed away. And I'll never forget it's like when you deliver flowers, you don't always know kind of where you're going, right? It's like, okay, well, where do I go here? So I go into this funeral parlor and I can't find anybody. But I run across the guy who's dying, or dead. He's dead. He's laying there in his coffin, coffin. And he was this really, you could tell he was probably really old. He was this old black dude. And he looked so peaceful. He's wearing his little tuxedo and had his hands. He looked so peaceful. And that's who I was bringing the flowers for. Not him personally, but his service. So I started off the day with a birth, and then I ended it with the death. Right? It was like, fuck, this is a very symbolic day. And the kid was white and the old dude was black, and it was just like the alchemy of delivery. So this is a 10th house eclipse, right? 12th house eclipse. It's a 12th house eclipse. So something is stirring here. Something is stirring. And you know that there are people that understand the power of this thing. And not just any eclipse. This is a fucking Scorpio moon eclipse in the 12th house. So I would say that there are some very occult forces that are paying attention to this eclipse. And there are things that are happening. There are things that are happening. There are things that are being cooked up, right? So when would we know about what's happened with this eclipse? Well, I would assume that we would know when we get into the new moon in Gemini, because that's where the new moon is going to be. The sun is 5 days away from transiting to Gemini. We already have a Mercury retrograde. So whatever is happening over here in the 12th house, well, we'll get some insight when the moon moves into Sagittarius. So we're talking Tuesday evening, Wednesday morning. We'll get some insight. But I think we'll get more insight when we get this moon transit into Gemini. And we'll get into all that wacky Gemini energy again. Speaking of which, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Peyton Gedron is a Gemini. Does that surprise you? So I feel like we're going to have a typical kind of Saturn square moon kind of knee-jerk response around whatever went down this weekend. Like that's coming. And we have Mars coming in here and getting ready to, on the 25th, conjunct Jupiter. What's that going to look like? More gun control, potentially more violence. So we could ostensibly be in a cycle of shootings here. And this theoretically would be the first one. And that we know these things come in threes. And they need momentum and they need frequency to enact any kind of a law. So whatever happens, this event might just be the first of three. because we haven't seen something like this in a while. And school is about to get let out. So May 15th, we got about another month of school. And we had all those weird school shootings when Trump was president, like really weird school shootings, which of course hatched Emma Gonzalez and David Rodriguez. So could we see something in the school setting again? Maybe, as we move into Gemini, Mercury retrograde, revisiting some of those pieces, some of that territory, possibly. Something's being cooked up, though. Something's being cooked up. Something's being invoked. And Saturn has a hard remedy, especially in Aquarius. Now, what's really cool is that because we have, well, that's not cool. I was talking about Pallas. So we have Vesta here at 27 Aquarius. I think this is important to talk about because Vesta is the oldest of the asteroids. And it's like this illumination, right? It's this flickering light of illumination. It is the Vestal, the Vestal vessel, right? Vestal and vessel are related. And we get the word Vestal Virgin from Vesta. And it is the oldest of the asteroids, but also the purest in that it has not been theoretically impregnated, right? I mean, that's the whole idea behind this. So when I see this, especially in this close conjunction, it's like the plan. This here with Vesta and Saturn, it's like the illumination of the plan. And I think it's on, right? I think it's clearly on. We're seeing the illumination of the plan. It's right there. And when we have this moon square Saturn, it does a couple things. Number one, since we're in a problem, reaction, solution world, also known as Hegelian dialectic, we could see Saturn come in and get real tough here and really try to profit on people's fears, which are rising. And of course, we know that Saturn wants to play the father or wants to play the parent. And well, we'll take care of it. Don't worry. We'll make your life better. Trust us. The government is here, right? So but with people who have eyes to see, they will understand what's going on. They'll understand what's happening. Because they can see theoretically what is being illuminated. Right here, right there. So it's going to be very interesting because people are starting. Look. Let's be clear. People are not happy. They're just not happy. And if you think that they've been happy, well, maybe they have been, but they've been off on their Jupiter and Pisces. It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine because I'm saved. Right? Those are the people that are happy. But mostly the masses, or you get, what's interesting too, if we just kind of look at this as we move into Gemini, we're getting really close to Gemini season. So by the time we get together next week, we'll be in Gemini. And Mercury's already there and it's retrograding. And we've seen that there are equal amounts of pain and disillusionment that are being doled out to both sides, the left and the right. It's happening. We were downtown yesterday where I think they had a Trump rally. I'm pretty sure they were rumored to be there. Donald Trump Jr. Who else was there? Kimberly Guilfoyle, Kevin Sorbo, Mike Pompeo. I really thought that those guys didn't like each other. It's just an act when Pompeo and Trump are on the same bill. It's just an act. Because Pompeo's even spoken out against Trump and they're on the same fucking bill. I think Pompeo wants to run for president. Pompeo would love to see. He's lost a shit ton of weight. You don't hardly recognize him anymore. He's lost a bunch of weight. He wants to run for president. He's a Capricorn. He's ambitious. But they had some protesters downtown, and it's all the Roe v. Wade stuff. And they had green hair. I think the green hair thing was It's kind of interesting. You know, there was this movie with Dean Stockwell called The Boy with Green Hair. And this boy wakes up one day and he has green hair and he becomes this cause celeb. And it's kind of this anti-war movie, which is it's fairly interesting. The Boy with Green Hair, look it up. But they all had green hair. So is this some kind of a throwback to the Boy with Green Hair? But he was protesting against war. And I guess they're protesting against the war in their wombs. So we were driving by and I started honking the horn and I started to yell out to them, First Amendment, First Amendment. And they got really into it. They were very excited. I was actually tricking them a little bit. But that's Mars. This is the Mars-Jupiter conjunction. We're going to see more intensity, right? Nobody's really happy. The left isn't happy. They're all pissed off because Roe v. Wade may be taken away from. The right isn't happy because of the whole censorship thing, the cost of gas, or the hijacking of the baby formula going to places that have been well cordoned off and reserved for the use of other people, right? Theoretically. So nobody's really happy. You may get happiness for a minute or two, but then I guarantee you the tide is going to turn. You won't be happy. So we have this kind of equal opportunity agitation. That's what's going on right now. Equal opportunity agitation. But ultimately, the goal here, right, is to create and foment enough unhappiness so that somebody's going to snap. And we get into this Mars transit in Aries, it's going to be hot and heavy. The weather is getting hotter. It's picking up. We haven't seen Mars in Aries really since 2020. In October 2020, that's it. That's when Mars and Aries went, see ya, behind the sun. And during that summer, the summer of Floyd, oh yeah, Mars was very active. It was fire in the streets. So there are some interesting things happening with this chart in the chart of the moment. Again, you have Mars and Neptune and Jupiter all trining the moon. So if we can channel or use some of this knowledge, I would say, or getting over our fear, I think that's a big thing. I think if we get over our fear, get through our fear, we can redeem some of this energy, because Pisces is a sign, in my estimation, is redemptive. It is a redemptive sign. Pisces deals with forgiveness. Pisces deals with love, unconditional love, right? This is what Pisces, at the highest level, at the highest vibration of Pisces, this is where it's at. So there is some redemptive energy here. If you can move through your fear, and the fear, there's only one real fear, and it's the fear of mortality. If you can move through your fear, especially in this moon, right, to stay grounded, to move through your fear, I think this could be a very profound time. Very profound time. And you might even be able to do some of your best work during your sleep and in your dream world, your dream life. Some of the bigger challenges are these squares going on with the sun, squaring Saturn. It's moved into that phase. Mercury's retrograding, and we'll start to move into square with Saturn. So we're in a conflict mode with authority, right? We're in a conflict authority mode. And especially at the final degrees of Taurus, we're talking about conjunction with fixed star Algol, which I've talked about before. And when you look at how this thing is lined up, especially with this supposed shooting on Twitch, what are we talking about? We're talking about people talking and expressing themselves. And if you look at the word Algol, it's inside the word algorithm, which works on limiting people's speech. That's what it does. Okay. If we don't like the algorithm, we're going to bury you. If the algorithm doesn't like you, we'll bury you. We'll make you irrelevant. If you're on Twitter, we'll make sure that 25 people read your tweet. That's about how many people usually get my tweets. That's what I think. If you're somebody that we want to promote, Oh, we'll make sure that a lot of people get your tweet. Oh, yeah. In fact, guess what we'll do? We'll suggest your tweet. We'll see. I get so many fucking lame ass tweet suggestions. Like, why the fuck are you sending me this? Just because I responded to somebody who might look like this demographic, right? They will pump the algorithm to promote tweets. So this is where we are right now. We're in this phase right here, 24, 25, 26 Taurus. That's where the sun is. And I believe Mercury retrogrades back to about 25, 26. My I think retrogrades back a little bit further than that. Started off at 4 Gemini. So we've got essentially what 3.5 weeks, right? So that's roughly a degree per day once we get through the station. So yeah, it's going to go back 21 degrees, roughly 20 degrees. So it's going to put it right in the middle decan of Gemini. So we're going to have two crosses of Mercury, one retrograding, and then ultimately one that moves forward, and it will cross Algol again. So we're really going to get into some speech territory this week. Oh yeah, for sure. By this time, by Friday of next week, I would say Thursday, Friday, and then really pumping it up. I think we'll be looking at a national dialogue around limiting what people say, where they can say it. We've already seen it. We've already seen the Department of Homeland Security create its own kind of Ministry of Truth. Like that's happening. And we've never seen anything like that before in this country. And they're going to try to link people's expression to hate crimes and then link them to domestic terrorism. This is all coming. And what theoretically we witnessed over the weekend is part of it, because they want to link those two things together so that if you say something, the something you say could be as equally as fatal as a round coming out of a rifle. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. So this is where a lot of this is starting to assemble itself. And when Mars moves into Aries, it's going to be very intense. Very intense. I think you'll see things like agents provocateurs, people who want to incite violence. I think you'll see people who have just had a fuck enough of it, right? You'll see some of that. You'll see people that want to institute more controls on guns. We've got this weekend, Venus Chiron conjunction. The Venus at 15 degrees, Chiron at 14 degrees. So our relationship with Aries, our relationship with wounds, our relationship theoretically with vulnerability, our relationship with guns, our relationship with violence, all that this weekend, right? Right there, bang, we can see it. And the thing about that is you look at Venus, and Venus is singletoned out. Was it sesquisquadrate? Is that what it is? Where's Uranus? Where's Uranus? Right there. Yeah, sesquisquadrate with Uranus. I mean, Venus is singletoned out. Very interesting. When you get into that singleton, there's nothing else that is defining what this planet is doing. So when we look at the news that comes on Monday, you're going to get a lot of intensity and verbiage around violence and guns right there. You can just see it. Singleton out 15 degrees, or the 15th degree. So look at where Chiron is. This shooting happened on the 14th, didn't it? I didn't believe it happened on the 14th, and that's the degree of Chiron. Isn't that interesting? Very interesting, as Artie Johnson, the fake Nazi, used to say on Laugh-In. So these are the things that we're dealing with here. When I talk about astrology, I talk about it from a collective level, because we're in a collective world now, and we still have individual things going on. Don't get me wrong, right? And sometimes it's harder to go through a lot of individual crises, turmoil, and transformation challenges when the collective world is as equally daunting. And sometimes when you're going through your own personal shit, It doesn't matter. Like it could be the best fucking world on the planet, best world in the universe. But if you're going through your own personal shit, it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter because your world is hell and that's all that's happening. Everybody else could be in their bubble, their bliss, they could be just fine. But when but there's always the sense or the potential or the possibility that you can rise above it. You can get some air, some oxygen, and realize, you know what? I'll be through this. I'll get through this. I'll do what I need to do, whatever that thing is. And there are remedies for every situation in life. And then guess what? You get the air, you get some distance, you get some perspective, and you begin to navigate out of hell. So you can get back on the main road of your own existence. And that's during a time when the world itself is not going through something intense and difficult. But when it's going through something intense and difficult, there's added pressure. There's pressure on top of your pressure in your own world. We've seen this. We've seen this, and we're now in this big collective vice grip, and it can be really challenging, really, really challenging. So when I talk about what we're going through, I'm sorting through the collective. I'm sorting through the mundane energies, because we are now, ever since 3/11, 2020, we have been basically welded to the collective, and we have not been able to untangle ourselves from it. So everything we're going through now, in many ways, is predicated by what we're all going through. That doesn't mean that we're all going through the same thing simultaneously, because there are variations and degrees of that. But for the most part, we are. And it's not a bad thing, because we're beginning to realize our oneness in a lot of ways. Somebody who is suffering in one part of the world, well, we're connected to that suffering because we know what it's like. We know what it's like to, not be able to move freely about the planet, or we know what it's like to not be able to go to a business and secure a good or a service through that business because that business has been shut. So we've been moved into this place of collective experience. And I don't necessarily think it's bad, as long as we don't bite off in that collective experience in a way that is like wholly disempowering. And because then it's not great. Then we're dealing with a fictionalized account of reality. And that's never, and someone said, well, it's all fiction. Well, maybe, but there are degrees of fiction. There are degrees of fiction. Speaking of fiction, let's look at Peyton Gedron. Now, again, I don't know the birth time of Peyton Gedron. All I know is he was born on June 20th, 2003 in Conklin, New York. So this is supposedly the guy that did the shooting. Right here. This is his chart. Mystic rectangle and a T-square with an opposition. That's what we got. Now, what's interesting is he's got the South Node in, Taurus. And where is this eclipse taking place? Right here. 23, 22. So just 7 degrees off of his South Node. And because he's born on June 20th, that puts him at the final degree of Gemini. So we have more of what I would call the Gemini effect. And just right on time, pretty much for Gemini season. So, because we go into Gemini season, 5 days from now, right? 5/20, 5 days from now, Gemini season. Gemini is that interesting month just prior to the summer solstice. And a lot happens during Gemini season. So there he is, 29 degrees, anaretic. He's, again, we're going to assume that this is his chart. It is a chart that is marked by very tight conjunctions. So here we have Saturn Sun, Saturn in Cancer at 2 degrees, and the Sun at 29. So we're talking about 3-degree orb. 29, 0, 4-degree orb. Kind of on the edge of that tight orb, but in a very unusual conjunction. I mean, if I were to look at this chart, I would say this is probably right out of the jump, kind of tough, right? 29, Gemini, skitsy. There's no energy left in there. Somebody did therapy, and there have been some whispers of maybe some kind of programming going on with the young man. But this is not, I can tell you right now, it's not an easy chart. Jupiter and Leo, I like a lot. And he's got it at 16 Leo. He's got Pluto retrograde. And so he's a Zoomer, Gen Z, which is interesting. So we have Pluto, Jupiter trine, and we know that that Gen Z is a generation that does not fall in line with the party program. Like this is a generation that is fairly irreverent and kind of cynical, and not in the cynical way that Pluto and Scorpio can be. It's cynical in a different kind of way. Like Pluto and Sagittarius likes to take the piss out of things. But this Jupiter Pluto trine, it's actually a pretty good aspect, especially if they're a athlete or a performer. And I guess maybe to some degree there was a performance over the weekend. But that's a pretty good aspect. But the tight conjunctions are there in the chart. Like look at over here, Mercury and Venus, very tight, 1 degree separation. Mercury at 12 Gemini, Venus 13 Gemini. Well, so what's going on here, right? What is going on here? If somebody is in a therapy situation with Mercury and Venus Gemini, they're really trying to sort out who they are. And this, to me, this would be somebody who kind of lives in a hall of mirrors, and very hard to distinguish like their thoughts and their ideas from the people around them, particularly maybe, I think he does have a brother. I think he has some siblings. But if you wanted to get in and hack somebody's mind, right? Mercury, Venus conjunction in Gemini, very hackable. That's what I think. And somebody, again, I don't know anything about this person except from the scant few things that I've read in a 180-page manifesto, supposedly influenced by what happened in Christchurch. I don't know if this person has the attention span for that. I really don't. I would say also that there could be some learning disabilities here with a Mercury Venus conjunction in Gemini. That close, squaring the moon. It's a wide square, but squaring the moon, very emotional. The Piscean moon, definitely erratic. I could see some erratic vibes here with this person. And again, if you wanted to get in and hack this person, you'd get there through the moon, squaring Venus and Mercury. And I would say probably the mother, challenged relationship with the mother. Again, I'm just reading the chart. You would get in and have some real deep vulnerability here, but not dealing with it in a way that is potentially helpful, right? The only thing that the moon has going for it right here is that sextile to Chiron. So there could be some healing potential here, possibly. But other than that, this moon is really challenged. Square to Pluto, right? Very fixed in terms of emotional response. And then the square with Venus and Mercury, which is mutable and, really erratic in a lot of ways. But then you have this other fixed thing going on over here. So I would say just by and large in this chart in general, if we have the right day and year for this young person who's been alleged to be the shooter, I think there's a high degree of malleability. There's a high degree of malleability here. And there's also some intensity. We have a Mars-Moon conjunction. So, he took part in something. Whatever his role is, this guy has taken part in something, right? And we live in a time where it's very, so in some ways it's easy. Like we could step back and we could look at this and go, oh, look, 180-page manifesto fits the bill. Cliche, cliche, cliche. We could say that. But then, like, what's really happened? Did people die? Were they shot? What, there's a lot of real gray area here, because some of it just does not add up. It fits into like the psychological operation bucket 101. And then there's another part of it, like, okay, what's really happening here? Because when you got a Mars Moon conjunction, honestly, as an astrologer, to me, that's violence. But when it's in Pisces, it's hard to determine, because we know what's going on with Pisces. Neptune conjuncting his moon, 25 degrees, right? Neptune squaring his sun. We don't know what's going on with this guy. Neptune sun square, he could be a first-class patsy with a Neptune sun square. I think this is the one thing we do know is that with the South Node, there's something here. There is something here, and they're going to use this energy to hijack this event through this individual. I do think that there's going to be more of these. And when we look at the numbers, right, the number 3 shows up consistently. We have Neptune at 12 Aquarius. That's 1 + 2. That's 3. We have Mars at 1 Pisces, Uranus at 2 Pisces. Another tight conjunction. 1 + 2 is 3. We have the moon in Pisces, 21 degrees. 2 + 1 is 3. We have Mercury at 12 Gemini. 1 + 2 is 3. So the number 23 shows up a lot. We also have 3 iterations of 29 or 11, with the sun at 29, the true node at 29, and the south node at 29. So those are 3 iterations of 29, which is 11, which adds up to what? 33. We have the vertex at 10, just based on this chart, because it may be different in some other chart. But the vertex at 10 and Saturn at 2, add them together, right? You get 12. They're both in the same sign. 1 + 2 is 3. So 3 shows up a lot here in this chart. So I would assume that we're going to have 3 events, and this would be the first of 3. And these things happen in 3s anyway. The first of 3. I don't know if the kid did it or not by his chart. I can tell tell you right now, it's very hard to determine that, especially with Neptune squaring his sun. Good luck. And he's at the 29th degree of Gemini. That's a crazy ass degree. There's nothing there. Nothing. But we also have these really weird tight conjunctions. They're all over the place. Mars, Uranus, hard. It's very hard. I would say that, that he probably had some issues around control. Mars Uranus conjunctions, impulse control can be very difficult with a Mars Uranus conjunction. Super difficult. Trining the sun and trining Saturn, which isn't bad. Nice Saturn trine, but those things need to be worked out over time. They're not instantaneous or overnight. And I feel like whoever this kid is, he's kind of caught between worlds. He's caught between the Peter Pan world of 29 Gemini, and he's caught and the Saturnian world in Cancer, which is forcing him to grow up very quickly. And I have no clue about his family, his upbringing, none of it. Kind of going in cold here. But the thing that troubles me the most about this chart is these tight conjunctions, especially this one, because again, I think it's hackable. You get into Pluto coming in through the back end, which is ideological. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here and how this whole thing tracks out. When will we know? When will we know? Maybe the new moon in Gemini, when it comes in and conjuncts his true node, which is again in a wide conjunction with Algol, right? Pretty wild shit. So everything that's kind of going on with the eclipse and the eclipse energy is showing up in this chart. Peyton Gedron. Very unusual name. Very unusual name. Born Friday, June 20th. All right. So let's see, what are we? We're almost 2 hours into the show. All right, why don't we talk about? Let's talk about this movie, The Wave, which I think is really. It's not a great movie because there are some ideas in it that are have played out in some ways, but it's worth watching, and it's worth watching because of some of the ideas. And it's actually a very humane film. It's kind of funny too. There are some very funny parts. You don't know whether it's a comedy or not because some of the scenes, it's one of those movies where it rides the rail of being comedic, suspenseful, dark. You're never quite sure where it's going. And so let me talk about the premise of the movie. The premise of the movie is that Justin Long, who is a Gemini, by the way, is someone who works for um, an insurance agency / law firm. So he's a lawyer in this movie. And he has found something in a case where there was a payout that had been awarded to a fireman who had died in a fire, right? Being a fireman. And there was a $5 million payout. And he found something that nullified that payment. So this is how the movie starts. And this is his big moment, right? He's been waiting for this big moment because he gets to sit down with the CEO of the law firm, right? Gets to sit down with him and tell him exactly what's happened and how they can cancel this guy's insurance so his wife and his kids don't get anything. And he's celebrating it because this is like the holy grail, I think, of this gig, right? You want to find these discrepancies so the company doesn't have to pay anything out. Now, I'm not going to give you any spoilers here because I think you should watch the movie. It's a pretty good movie. But something happens. So he goes home that night and he goes home to hang out with his fiancée, whom you can tell that he has nothing in common with. And she's a total and utter like materialist B word. And he's got a buddy who's played by the actor Donald Faison, who, if you're familiar with the TV show Scrubs, he was one of the stars of Scrubs. So he plays his buddy and he says, let's go out tonight and celebrate. Let's go out and party. And he goes out, he has to take his dog out, and he sees this couple in a house that's near his house, and they're old, and they're just sitting down, and they're being drenched by the blue ray, the cathode ray. They're being hypnotized by the cathode ray of their TV. And he sees them, he's like, fuck, is that us? Right? And then there's this other house where there's this couple who is close to like getting it on their couch. And it's like a very different scene. It's like, oh man, that is not my life. Like those people are actually living there. These other people are being hypnotized by the TV. So he decides to go out and he calls his buddy. He says, okay, let's go. So his buddy takes him to this bar. Donald Faison takes him to this bar, and it's called the Madrid. And it's under a freeway overpass, and it's a dive bar. So they go to this dive bar and they meet these two women. He meets this woman over here, and she is friends with Katia Winter, this other actress. So they have some drinks, and she calls him out, says, you know, what do you do? She says, well, I'm a lawyer. She goes, oh, you one of those public defenders? He goes, no, I'm one of those faceless corporate asshole types. So she kind of likes him because he's being honest. And she gets into his life very quickly, almost like she's reading his mind. And so they have some shots, and then they have some whiskey, and they're like, do you want to go to a party? I'm like, okay. So they go to this party and he winds up, I think she did some cocaine. And then she says, there's a guy that has it here. So he's like, okay. And he stumbles into this room and supposedly he meets the guy. And I'll show you the guy really quickly. But you know what? Man, I didn't want to go here yet. Fuck. Let's rewind the tape. It's a Mercury retrograde. Because there's a couple other things I want to talk. I normally don't do this, but I wasn't done with the whole thing with this guy in New York, Buffalo. Put this aside. We're going to come back here. Just remember the guy. We're going to come back to the guy, but we're going back in time now because there's a couple things I wanted to cover, and one of them was the connection with the Black Sun, because this guy Peyton Gedron, there were references to like Nazism, replacement theory, and then the Black Sun comes up. And it was part of this. The Black Sun is a symbol of the Azov command. And I wanted to show this to you. And this is one of those things. You can kind of see it here, right? You go onto the Black Sun page on Wikipedia. And they're trying to link it to the guy in Christchurch, Brenton Tarrant, right? And supposedly Peyton Gedron was getting some inspiration from Brenton. We'll get into Brenton Tarrant for a minute. But then you go down here, and it says the Black Sun motif is even less ambiguous, though based on medieval German symbols. The Wewelsburg mosaic is a unique design commissioned specifically for Himmler and his primary contemporary association in Nazi occultism, for which Nazi satanic groups and esoteric neo-Nazis adopt. So when you look at the Black Sun, it is divided into 12 houses, right? And these are theoretically the rune, which is it's the lightning rune in runic script, which was adopted by the SS, right? So this is that rune. And what is give me a second. Sawelu. This is the rune Sawelu, which is life force, lightning. This is Sawelu right here. Bang. Right. And then each one of these is the 12 stations, theoretically. All right, so let's keep going here. During the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, NATO tweeted a photo of a female Ukrainian soldier for International Women's Day. The soldier wore a symbol on her uniform that appears to be the Black Sun symbol because the symbol is the same color of the surrounding uniform. It is difficult to see. After receiving complaints from social media users, NATO removed the tweet and stated the post was removed when we realized it contained a symbol that we could not verify as official. The Ukrainian Azov battalion has used a symbol for part of the logo. So here, I'll show you right here, that exact tweet. It's right over here. This is the symbol. And they actually had linked this symbol to what was going on in Buffalo over the weekend. So this is Rupa Subramanya, and she said, blue check mark. NATO quickly deleted the tweet yesterday that featured a photo of a Ukrainian soldier wearing a neo-Nazi Black Sun patch. Remember, we're constantly told that neo-Nazis in Ukraine are an insignificant fringe. And if you point to it, you're a Putin stooge or worse. Good for her. Thank you at NATO for deleting this tweet, which featured a soldier. No, don't you want the fucking truth to come out? This is one of the women. This is exactly what was in the Wikipedia link to the Black Sun. It's right there. It's on her fucking uniform. We know it is a symbol of the Azov Battalion. And these are the people that came into power on May 5th in 2014. Now, when you do this, and I did do this, when you do this, let me go back here. All right, so let's do this. One more. So we calculated Peyton Gedron in the gematria, which I thought was interesting to some degree. The thing that came up for me with Peyton Gedron in gematria is his gematria is the same as Generation Z. And nobody had put in Peyton Gedron yet on gematrix.org. So they wanted to know if I wanted to enter it. So I was the first person to put his name in here. But his name is the same. We're talking Jewish gematria as Generation Z. Kind of interesting, don't you think? I think so. Since he is a Gen Z kid. And then I put in there's a date and time piece, right? A date and time piece. And I wanted to look at the date and time or the days between a specific event. And the specific event was the Christchurch shooting. So we go into Christchurch and see, is it over here? Let me just get back here. Yeah, let's just do this. Okay, so let's go into the Christchurch shooting really quickly. All right, so the Christchurch shooting took place on March 15th, the Ides of March, 2019, and supposedly the number of deaths that took place there were 51, so it was an inversion of 15. Now, I covered the Christchurch shooting pretty intensely, and I'm fairly convinced that it is a psychological operation. In fact, more than fairly convinced. Let me do this. Okay. So we're going to look at, I thought this was quite interesting in a lot of ways. So we're going to look at, we're going to go March 15. And the Christchurch shooting was on 2019. Doesn't seem that long. I mean, it seems 2019 is not that long ago, but it seems ages ago. Trump was still president then. 2019. All right, 2020. Let's hold on. Let's do 5. Three, 15, 2019, put that in there. And then we go. So if we put in the number of days between 3/15, 2019 and 5/14, 2022, that's 1,156 days or 22, right? 22. Interesting number. So let's put in the date calculation. We'll add 1 day to it. It's 1,157 days. It is 38 months. So include end date in calculation, 38 months. But again, we come up with 11, which is a variation of 22. 22. So we have 38 months or we have 1,156 days between those two events. and the number 22 comes up. Anyway, we'll put a cap on that. I just wanted to bring the Azov thing in there. I wanted to bring the Azov thing and the Black Sun piece because I believe that's part of the Buffalo thing. And then, of course, we know that it's really a Ukrainian deal. And the part where his name has the same gematria as Gen Z, which I think is kind of weird, although it's a bad rap for Gen Z. Let's put it that way. All right, let's get back to this movie because I think the movie is really interesting for a number of reasons. So what we have in the movie is that he winds up going to this party and he takes this drug that is a hallucinogen. Let me do. And like I said, I can't really play the movie here because I'll get fucking banged for a copyright claim. The Wave movie 2019. All right. So let me see if I can find a scene where and this is the scene right here. So this guy, he's played by an actor named Tommy Flanagan, and he is giving him this psychedelic. And the way that he has to take it, the Justin Long character has to take it, is that the woman that he's with has to have it on her tongue, and then she has to kiss him. And supposedly it's a very powerful psychedelic, right? Now, not everybody likes this movie, but I do for a number of reasons. Number one, this guy's a real character. And number two, it's the underlying astrological message, because what happens after that is almost nearly unexplainable. And that he goes in and out of these very intense psychedelic, some might even call psychotic states. And that the one constant about what happens is chaos. It's all chaos. But at the end of the movie, all of the chaos comes together. It all comes together. And for me, this is the Aquarian theme of the movie. First of all, you're dealing with an Aquarian idea, the wave, right? The Aquarius is a wave, and there are highs and there are lows. There is meaning and there is a lack of meaning. This is not a constant. We are in a waveform right now. We're in a waveform collective moment. And so there are going to be things that are going to be these highs, there are going to be these lows, there are going to be things that look like they are really bad, and there are things that are going to come out of the crisis or the chaos that will actually be good. There are things that are going to look like the best fucking thing in the world, and there's chaos that emerges. So this is what happens with Justin Long's character. He looks like he has everything together in some ways, but he doesn't. So chaos ensues. Big chaos, big time chaos, reality chaos that you really can't explain in the movie. But there are these intermittent scenes in the movie where he's taken out of the chaos and he's taken into this kind of beautiful and idealized world of perfect order and harmony. And the cosmos are always playing a backdrop in these scenes. And he says, I've never seen stars like this before. And to me, that's a really Aquarian moment, because we're dealing with the heavens, and Aquarius rules astrology. So chaos is an underlying theme. And the whole idea is that this drug, this psychedelic, would hit him in waves, which is an Aquarian concept. And another underlying concept of the movie
is that the universe is seeking harmony, and that when your life is out of balance, when it's in chaos, it's the universe that is reordering things so you can come back into harmony again, which I've always felt pretty strongly about with Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius. And I've known a lot of people with Aquarius rising in their chart, and they live a life of nearly constant chaos. And when they're living outside of when they're living outside of their own directed harmony, their own personal directed harmony, not the world's, not their parents, not their employers, not even the vague hopes and dreams and wishes that they have taken on as their own. Those are not true harmony. Their true harmony is the expression of who they are, and it may look very different than the thing that they supposedly signed up for. I've seen this again and again with Aquarian rising people, and even Aquarian people to a certain extent, because if they're not living that life, the God of Thunder roars. So this is part of the narrative for this movie, is that the universe is seeking harmony. And as a result, things that look chaotic, things that look like they are random and uncontrollable, is really the universe asserting its primeval order. So when we look around, right, we look around and we look at the events of our time, and that's not to say that we have to always go along with them, but perhaps the reason why we're experiencing so much chaos, and this is not the Ordo Ab Chao, because the Ordo Ab Chao is real, which is order out of chaos. It can be really manufactured. It can be engineered. Chaos can be engineered. And quite often it is engineered. But we're at a time now where that manufactured chaos can result in something that is not planned. It is not part of the blueprint of the manufactured chaos. The manufactured chaos is supposed to produce problem, reaction, solution. We'll take this last event that we just had over the weekend. And the people that are the architects of those events believe that they'll get the most mileage out of that, and then they'll be able to catalyze an order, right? Catalyze some kind of order out of the chaos of that event. Where we are now, it's not going to work that way. These things might be staged, but they won't have the effect of the staging, or the impact of that staging will not have the desired effect. It won't, because that's where we are now. And we're in this place, and that's that chaos, right? That's the Ordo Ab Chao chaos. Then there's the other chaos, which has been set in motion by any number of other degrees or acts. And really, if we step back and look at how out of balance we are in this world, and we like to look back, and I do too, I'm guilty of this. I like to look back on maybe the 70s or the 60s to some degree, but the 70s and to some degree the 80s, it's like those were periods of time where there was less, and there was less chaos. There was still chaos in the world, but there was less chaos. It was coming. The chaos was coming. You could tell it was encroaching, but there was less of it. But we're still out of balance. I mean, this world is really out of balance. And people, and I love people, a lot of people have been conned with their lives to pursue certain things or to sign off on a certain dream or a certain person through no fault of their own, because that's how the programming has gone in our world. And as we've gone down a lot of these paths, because we haven't had any real spiritual foundation or fulcrum or balance in our lives, those things get hollowed out pretty quickly. And so we have a lot of imbalance in our world. There's a term for it called koyana skotsi. It's a it's a Hopi term called world out of balance. And so when we see a world where there's infinitely more chaos, it feels to me like what we're ultimately trying to do is to bring all of this back into balance, and not a balance that is a solution that comes from Klaus Schwab or the new Schwabians. No, something bigger, something much, much bigger is at play here. And while the movie, I think, tends to be a little bit cliched in places, the underlying message and the theme is one that I think is really important. And there is some very unusual time stuff going on in this movie that has to do with playing certain things out and how they get played out in a way that completely brings everything back into a form of balance. It's a really interesting movie. I think it is. And I think that the Aquarian themes, from the title of the film, the wave, to the sheer chaos that ensues, to the strange relationship with time, and the effects of the so-called drug that come in these waves, that forces our protagonist to shift and change his life in a very rapid period of time, so that the universe itself comes into balance. Now, the backstory of this movie is really interesting, because the guy who wrote it, his brother was a fireman who died in a fire, and there was a lawyer who worked for an insurance company that canceled his claim. Because I don't want to talk about it too much, because I think the movie is worth watching. It's available, by the way, on both Netflix and Amazon Prime. So if you're a member of Netflix or Amazon Prime, you can watch this movie. I think it's like an hour and 10 or an hour and 15 minutes. It's not a terribly long movie, but it is kind of intense, and the visuals are really interesting. And what he wrote this movie, again, to me, even the idea behind the movie is very Aquarian. It's very Aquarian. The guy wanted to figure out why this guy went, in some ways, out of his way to find the thing that kept his brother, who died in a fire as a fireman, to keep him from getting his settlement. So instead of like going to find this guy and shaking him down or beating him up or walking into his insurance office with an AK-40, an AR-15, he writes the script. And he writes a script to somehow humanize the lawyer adjuster, right, who's played by Justin Long. So this movie is based on a real life event that this screenwriter is trying to work out in his life. Very interesting. And when we get into Aquarius, and I think hope is a little flimsy, but Aquarius does traffic in hope. Like it's a better tomorrow, a better world, a more egalitarian world, a world where we understand our connection to one another and the planet and all the things that live here, right? We're keyed into the web of life and the greater family. That's what Aquarius, in its best sense, represents. In its worst sense, it has some other very dark manifestations, but we're at the top of the food chain here with Aquarius right now. So that's interesting, right? Like he is, in his own way, doing his best to find this redemptive vehicle for what happened to his own brother. And it manifests in this movie. Now, the other sub-narrative, which is really weird, happens to do with Justin Long. And I think there were a number of actors that wanted this role, but I think they were happy they got Justin. Now, why Justin Long chose this role or wanted to be a part of it it's an interesting story, because apparently he was involved in the shooting of another movie. He's been in a lot of movies. He's been in like 56 movies. And he's the actor that was probably most famous for his role as being the Apple computer, and some other dorky guy was the PC. Remember him? He was the Apple. But he was in this movie that was being shot in Michigan, and apparently he went out and they got high, and he thought he was just smoking cannabis, weed, right? But he doesn't. He winds up smoking PCP, and a lot of weird shit happens to him, including like really compromising pictures that were taken and sent to TMZ. It was like a weird thing. So this guy even goes on that journey. He goes on that weird drug journey with PCP. And I think he had to jump out of the car of the people he was with. I think he did long-term nerve damage to one of his legs. It was really strange shit. Like this whole idea of reality and life sort of meeting in this one movie is very unusual. And Justin Long is a Gemini. So of course he's going to have this weird life imitating art, imitating life thing in his life. And then what's going on with this shooting, and this Peyton Gedron is also a Gemini. And we're seeing, again, this kind of weird, subjective hall of mirrors like reality. So where are we now? Where are we in this so-called reality that we're in? It's very strange. It's very, very strange. But I feel like, because when we went into the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on December 21st in 2020, it was the wild card. Jupiter became the wild card to assert balance in the overarching Saturnian theme of Saturn being in Aquarius and the dark new age. So what we're witnessing now, and I'm sharing this with you, and this movie is like a metaphor. It's there, and I don't like to use the word hope. I think hope is really flimsy. But we're living in a time now where I think it's really important to step back every now and then and to see what's happening, and to not place a judgment or a label on certain things that are occurring in what we call mundane world. And yeah, we can look at them and we can see what's going on. And I can look at that chart and go, okay, I feel like this is the first of these three events that are going to be related to shooting and guns. I think that's there. We can look at that, right? But how it plays out and the balance that it tries to, the balance, the cosmic balance that we are in the process of. It's a 20-year process that wants to assert itself. We will be a witness to. So, and this is not some kind of hopium, all right? But if you feel like your life is falling apart, it's probably not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, because what we're seeing is that the universe wants to reassert some harmony in your life. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I firmly believe in that. I firmly believe that we are living in some greater macrocosmic reality that we can sometimes have a glimpse of when we tap into things like synchronicities and events in our lives where this macrocosmic gnosis inserts itself into our lives, and it kind of winks back at us and says, okay, you're on a different path now, right? I think this is where we are. And for a lot of people, it's very hard because there's a lot of chaos in the world. And I'm here to say, if you can hang in there and work with it and work with the chaos in your own life and stay in the game, because I think staying in the game is important. In this world, staying in the game is important. You stay in the game, you'll find at some point that the balance will reassert itself. Well, when will it happen? A month from now, a year from now? Everything has changed. The schedule has moved up. Time is accelerating. So what would once resolve itself in 2030 gets resolved before 2030 because everything is moving up. So you may not have to hang in there for that long. But it also means that the ride is going to get more chaotic. That I can almost guarantee 100%. And this is going to be a very interesting week, just in terms of what comes out over. And we're in these eclipses now, where it's going to get, I think, more intense. When it gets more intense, we get more chaos potentially, right? So learn how to surf the big waves. This is the cosmic mavericks that you're on right now. Get your big board out. All right. I think that's going to do it for tonight. I hope you have found something here in this broadcast of interest and helpful. I do astrological readings. You can go to robertphoenix.com. I do have an astrology course, which is a good one. If you want to get nuts and bolts with astrology, A to Z, take you from learning how to interpret a chart to getting into things like progress charts and all kinds of interesting stuff. It's all available on my website as well. It's a really, really decent price, $295. I haven't changed that price once since I offered that. It's a downloadable course shot in HD, and you get labs, and you also get lectures in that as well. I think that's it. I think we're out of here. Oh, and by the way, if you do get a reading, there's a number to call. Call that number. You get to me right away, and we book it. No downtime. All right? It's on that page. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. Everybody out there, love to all of you and what you're all going through. It's significant. We're living in significant times. Don't forget that. We're living in very significant times. And this is I think the greatest test, we've ever faced. And we're all here together. Don't forget that. So if you can help somebody out along the way on their journey through chaos, and you could do it in a way that's reasonable and loving and kind, I think it's a good time to do it. Take good care. Bye for now. We'll see you tomorrow on 15 Minutes of Flame. And we'll be back here next week to have a little Sunday night AstroLive and navigate the cosmos. Bye for now.